Hello and welcome to the Principal Liner Notes podcast. This is Sean Gaylord coming to you with episode 176. And I am so grateful to be here. You're probably looking at the screen and going, wait a minute, does Sean have a twin? Is this his stunt double? No, that you do not adjust your screens. This is not the Twilight Zone. There's nothing wrong here. But I am very, very grateful to be here with Don Sturm. Don is a technology integration specialist in the great state of Illinois. He is a podcaster. He is an ed tech guru. He is also a fellow bandmate on this journey that we are all within in terms of education and leadership and ideas. We'll talk more about ideas in just a little bit. But Don, thank you so much for being here on a Saturday morning here on the podcast, pal.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, and it's just so funny to look at the screen, and it's like, okay, my beard's maybe a little longer, but that's about it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
about it.
yeah. It is. Yeah, a little bit longer. I did trim it up this morning. And then and just out of curiosity, is Illinois home? Are you native to Illinois
I,
or
I am. I currently live in Normal, Illinois, which is the home of Illinois State and Illinois Wesleyan. That's about oh 40 miles from where I grew up, which is in East Peoria. So, yep, I have lived here. The furthest I've moved away is Danville, Illinois, right on the border of Illinois and Indiana. But it's Illinois my whole life.
was East Peoria the fictional or the home for Wayne's World? Was that or no, or was it Aurora? Where
No,
was
that was Aurora.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Well, again, probably another kinship here. My parents born and raised on the south side of Chicago.
Okay.
So again, probably another reason for our kinship as well with Illinois roots. So my brother lives in Chicago as well. So
Oh, okay. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
and we don't make it up there as
yeah.
often as you would think. I mean, a lot of times people think, especially like if we travel overseas and you say Illinois,
Mm.
everybody just assumes Chicago, but we're about 150 miles south. And usually when we go, it's to the suburbs. And I know this bugs people in that live in Chicago. For us, for a lot of people downstate, once you get above I-80, it's Chicago, even
Mm.
though it's not technically Chicago. You're in the suburbs. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's more to the land of Lincoln than Chicago. So we do
correct.
want to we definitely we definitely want to include the whole state in the mix.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but anyway, I know speaking of Illinois and we'll kind of put this at the top of our list to kind of touch upon. But you're involved with an event that's coming up very soon, a statewide event that kind of celebrates all kinds of things. And I have followed Idea Illinois for a few years, and actually more than that. And when I've seen the posts and I've seen the hashtags, and I know we have some mutual friends. I
Yeah.
always think, man, that is just there's just a lot of warmth. There's a lot of closeness and kinship. I wish I can go there. I almost did, and that wasn't meant to be. But maybe talk a little bit about Idea Illinois and the ethos and the vision and why of this just really special event.
Yeah, I look forward to it every year. I've been going in some iteration. I can't remember now if it's 4 years ago, 3 years ago that we changed our name. We were Illinois Computing Educators, so it was ICE. We changed it
Mm.
um, to IDEA. I'm currently the incoming or the president elect um, of the organization itself. And
Congratulations.
so, thank you. And so, our big culminating, well, I don't know about culminating, but our big event of the year is IdeaCon. And I would say it's in Chicago, but it's actually in Schaumburg, which is a suburb. And it's just It is just a great event. I mean, I am all about relationships. I'm all about learning,
Mhm,
and I'm all about relationships. And you can learn anywhere. You and I can learn by doing this, but
mhm,
that connection piece of being in person with a couple thousand people, um, some of whom you only see, once a year, and sometimes that's where I've met people for the first time. It's just a great event. And this year I'm not actually on the conference committee. That's why I need to do a shout out. It's a huge event that is literally put on by a relatively small number, that's planned by a relatively small number of people.
mm.
And I think Victoria Thompson describes it well. She said it's the Disney World of conferences. And if you know Victoria, she loves her Disney World. And so, yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. It's actually, I'll be leaving a week from, well, I guess I don't know when this is coming out, but I've got about a week before we head there. So looking forward to it. Going to do some live podcasting there, and a colleague and I, Courtney Edelman, are going to present on AI. But there's I mean, just all kinds of, and I don't want to shoot a number because I don't have it, but the number of sessions, you know, 200 plus sessions that we have available
Mm.
over 3 days. So I can't wait.
Now, I'm excited for it, and this will probably drop around the time of the event and the
Okay.
conference. So yeah, totally intentional. So while this is playing, you'll be live podcasting and running around and connecting, with Victoria Thompson, a couple of our mutual friends. I know Sarah Candela
Yeah.
will be there,
Yep.
and then another great mutual friend of ours, Maria Galanis. I'm so
Yep.
excited about that as well. And I'm going to be having major FOMO, but I will be following and cheering you all on. Um, you mentioned, and I mentioned to this as well, podcasting. I know that I podcast, you podcast. Um, what drives you to do that? I have various reasons why I do this. I'm not getting anything for this. I mean, there's no corporate money under the table. I I,
Yep.
I don't do sponsors.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, so, it's a hobby, it's a passion. How and I've toyed with the idea of doing another podcast. I did that briefly, and I couldn't balance both those. So you're doing 2 podcasts. What drives you to do that, Don?
Well, people would probably say, if you ask someone else that, they would say he just likes to talk. And there's that element. There is something, and I've always had this. It's like I have to produce things. I have to make
Hmm.
things. And I'm not a home improvement person. I don't enjoy that. I'm not a like the my brother is a very hands-on, he's an electrician. I'm not that kind of person, but I've got all this stuff up here, whether it's good, we could argue about whether it's good or bad, but
Yeah.
I just have to have some kind of outlet. And I think also I am a doer. And so I complain. Like, I'm not going to make it sound like I don't ever complain about things. But at some point, I think we have to do something. We have to do something. Complaining, venting, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't make any inroads. And
Mhm.
so to me, podcasting is an easy way to get people to think about things, and it allows me to get out, and my co-host to get out the things that we want to get out. But
Yeah.
then also, even if one or two people, um, even if it was only one or two listeners like that, I'm a big believer in the ripple effect. If I make, like, we talk a lot, and people will ask, and I don't really answer it. I mean, I could find the answer, like, oh, how many listeners do you have? I don't
Yeah.
really care. Now, if I had some contract where I was trying to get, it'd be different. And people are like, what do you mean you don't care? And I'm like, it's like a PD session. If I have a PD session that somebody signs up for and I'm hoping for 10 and I get two, I could sit around being bummed that only two people, but it's like that's two people.
Yeah.
And we can try to have an impact. They can have an impact on me. I can have an impact on them. And so for me, it is just an outlet. And I have always been intrigued by podcasting. I mean, I don't know if you are aware, but like podcasting kind of started and it got popular, but then it kind of died off a little
Hmm.
bit. And then all of a sudden, I think with things like Serial
Yeah.
and that, it shot back up. I was podcasting my classroom, and I have, quotation marks. I was podcasting my classroom 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it was in terms of a podcast, it was here's what I'm doing
Hmm.
if you are absent. If a parent is like, hey, what do you do in history class? Boom, there it is. This is what, I mean, it wasn't anything special. And then a good friend of mine ran for Congress 5 years ago. I was his campaign manager. And when we lost, we were in the car and he was like, we can't make this for nothing. Like, we did this run, we weren't successful, and
Mm.
we were like, let's make that into a podcast. So I had done a political podcast, and then
Nice.
life gets in the way. After like 3 seasons, it was difficult to keep doing that regularly. And then had a chance in our district to podcast with a great friend of mine, Courtney Edelman. We do through the educational looking glass that takes a look at topics that are important for teachers. And then that led to a podcast with Stephanie Brown focused on caregivers called Care You. And
Mhm.
I love it. And both of the podcasts I'm doing now is actually encouraged and promoted by my district. So it's wonderful. Like we're sitting here on a Saturday, which is a wonderful way to spend a Saturday. I can podcast during the workday,
Mm.
and it opens up so many things, whether it's interviewing teachers, whether it's
Mhm.
um, just talking about things that are important in our district, but then we know in other districts. So that was a really long answer to a
No,
very simple question.
no, it's compelling. Length is not a prerequisite or a barrier here. Um, the other thing, and I often see podcasting too. It's a creative outlet, but then it's also an opportunity to not only, because you're right, we've got to generate content, but we've got to get our voice out in some way that we might not normally have that opportunity. So I always honor the notion of voice. I think about,
Yep.
my, kind of, I mentioned my father before we hit record here, and how his wisdom of, and he still tells me this: hold your head up high. You have a voice. Hold your head up high. Walk tall. A lot of that comes from my own background as African American, and him fighting against segregation and racism and those things. But I also see podcasting as kind of an extension of his wisdom, and like anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And any, like, I mean, right now, I don't, and I know you're the tech integration specialist. Like all of this, there's no kind of bells and whistles right now. There's no, I can podcast from my phone. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll riff.
Yep.
Um, I'm doing this from a laptop. I'm in my home, so it's, I think there's something about podcasting in terms of the inclusivity and the amplification of voice. And here you and I on a Saturday
Yeah.
having a conversation, interacting, and then also thinking about beyond the fourth wall, or I don't know what we call this other wall in podcasting world, but others who are listening or viewing, who are in this conversation, which I think is so powerful, from a digital citizenship perspective, and then also too I as a school leader, you as a technology, also a tech leader and district leader, technology integration specialist. We're modeling different things here, for the
Yep.
people we serve, which is powerful. The other thing, Don, that you
Well,
also go ahead,
can I just step in for a second?
please.
That's
Yeah.
actually why I really like live podcasting, like at a conference. And
Hmm.
people, there's always that element. Like, I'll be honest, I love to be it doesn't bother me. I'm not scared to be up in front of people. So I'd be lying if I said there wasn't an element of that. I'd be lying. But really, it's what I call it's like that Oz. It's people think I think sometimes they hear podcast and it's like, oh, I've got to have this fancy board and I don't even know what's going on there. And you don't have to. I do. You don't have to. But when you see it live, you're like, oh, that's all they're doing
Yes.
is, and we have people that are professional podcasters that they can be judgmental about, oh, your sound level is just a little bit off and why do you do your intro that way. I let that stuff goes in one ear and out
Same.
the other. That's
Same.
because the important stuff is the conversation. I mean, like this morning when I got up and I was like, oh no, I forgot my microphone. So I literally thought, oh, I'm going to hook up my Zoom mini recorder and try that as an external mic. But it wouldn't matter if I didn't. I could talk into my computer. It's just
Yeah.
it is not difficult to do, and it does. Um, we have to let people have their voice, and yeah, podcasting is just a great way of doing that.
Yeah, that's I appreciate the kinship on the simplicity and the risk taking, when it comes to doing this, because yeah, I'm not. This isn't a technical podcast, and again, again, it's all about the voice. It's all about the conversation and the learning and the connections that ensue. And another thing that you modeled for me that I've learned, and I guess probably from you just on X in the last 4 or 5 months or so, is your microblogging. And I would love for you to kind of share your story of that, because I find it to be very powerful. And again, just a kind of another level of voice and modeling that you're doing, similar to podcasting.
Yeah, and just so you know, you cut out a little bit on my end. I don't know if that was me or you or whatever. So I caught the microblogging. I kind of missed that lead into it. So um yeah, I came across actually Julie Smith. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Hmm.
She's just a fabulous person, and she has this list of all these AI
Yeah.
services. And I'm going down the list. And I was like, I wonder what this. And I think maybe she even called it out specifically this audio pin. And I'm like, ooh, you talk into your phone, and then it uses AI to generate what you said based on a set of prompts. So, for instance, I can just say, I can talk into it for 15 minutes. Now, I have a pro account. They had an opportunity for a cheaper price. So, for 15 minutes, I can talk. And then I say, I want this simple and clear, or I want it as an
Mm-hmm.
email, or I even put a sample of my writing in and said, write it like it's me. And then it takes that audio, does its magic, and then produces what I said in a more organized fashion. So I literally could, and I've tried it, I can go all over the place. Oh, I'm talking about this, and then I go here, and it will put it together. The title then says, this is what um, I think you were talking about. And I love it because I can, on the way to work, um, I can just say what's on my mind, and then I say create an image of that, and then there's my voice right there. And by voice I mean my thoughts,
Yeah.
it's just fabulous. I mean, I've started doing, like, when I get done reading a book, I will just kind of talk about, here's what I thought about the book, here's my concerns, this I would recommend it, and then I just have a category that's books. I haven't posted any of those, But for me, it's a way I could go back and then organize and say, hey, show me all the tags that I did of books. And here, if you emailed me and said, hey, I see you were reading blank, I could
Mhm.
say, yeah, are you interested? I'll share my kind of review of it if you want. So it's I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've played with it a little bit, and I've enjoyed it. I've actually used Magic Pen a couple of times as a almost like a synopsis or an intro about a podcast episode.
Yep.
Then I'll use that as, and then I'll post it and say, hey, here's, in addition to the guest or the topic, here's a little insight or director's commentary, if you will, on the podcast episode. So I really appreciate you introducing and modeling that. A couple of times in our conversation here, you've mentioned AI, and Magic Pen is kind of an extension of that. I feel, Don, that we're on the cusp or verge or in the middle of a new era. I
Yep.
mean, the ship has already left the dock. We're at warp factor 3, and we're heading into the whatever quadrant in the Federation. Um, what is what is your sense on the pulse of AI now? What are your kind of thoughts, advice, and insights? I really, because I always respect your voice. I respect your insight and your thinking on things, and you're very generous with sharing those. But I would just love to hear your thoughts on AI and where we are right now in 2024.
Um, boy, and there's so many people that are talking about that. Um, I mean, it's here to stay. I think that ultimately is what grounds everything I think about with AI. If it was something that was just a flash in the pan, I mean, but it's not going away. And that fact, as educators, it has to play in to our willingness to explore it. I mean, it is not going away. And so we have, and I mean, I cannot say enough about Magic School. That's what we're doing in our district. Our admin, a colleague and I actually, who I co-host the podcast with, Courtney Edelman, and I talked to our district and said, hey, we have this opportunity to finish out the year with the enterprise version of it to test what will come out as their student component.
Hmm.
Let's put this in front of teachers. It is usable. I mean, you go to Chat GPT and there's a lot of white space.
Hmm.
And I think that like teachers like, I don't even know what to do with that. Where Magic School, it's these little blocks of
Yes,
I want to do this and I want to do this. And I think here's my gut feeling, and it's truly just Don Sturm's gut feeling. If we can get teachers excited about what they can do with it, the more comfortable they get with it, I think the more comfortable they get talking about it with students.
yeah,
And the more comfortable they get talking about it with students, they can then really dig down into okay, why are kids using it now just to write papers? I
exactly.
would argue, and maybe it's simplistic, and maybe there would be people saying, oh, he's been out of the classroom too long, he doesn't get it. I still think there's this element of you have to talk about things to kids and get them thinking about it. There are always going to be people, and I'm saying people, adults and kids, who are going to cheat on things.
Hmm.
It's always going to happen. I don't want to go to the lowest common denominator. Let's help them. If for you as a teacher it helped you write a lesson plan or give you an idea, why would that not be something that you would help students understand? We are doing we're promoting magic school in our district now, and I know we're going around to each of the 7 buildings, and we are talking about here's how you can use it. And we have some teachers that say, I'm just not sure, how is us using it different than telling students not to use it? And
Mm.
I take a couple of approaches. One is like with magic school, they're very upfront. It's like an 80-20. Like, okay, have it produce something, but if
Yeah.
you just take it as is, no, that's probably not ethical.
Mhm.
But if you're putting your spin on it, and as a teacher, you know how to research, you know how to write an email, you know how to write a paper. With kids, I would say the difference is we're trying to teach them how to do that. And
Mhm.
so I don't know if that made sense or not. It's like,
No, yeah.
why take, like, I'm not being tested on whether I can write a college essay or not. That's not, I've already done that. I've already
Right.
gone through that. So for me to say, here's what this student has done, here's what I like about them, here's what I think their pros are, give me a draft of a college recommendation. I don't see that as unethical because I am going to be the kind of person that's going to read it and go, oh, I don't like the way that's said. I'm going to
Yeah.
change that. But a student, no, that we're trying to teach them how to do that. And so it's like, why don't we give a calculator to a second grader? They have to learn how to do the math, but down the road, we're not going to keep a calculator from them. So hopefully that
No,
made sense.
it makes beautiful sense, and I think about, in the early days of Google
Yep.
and those kinda the early frontier of digital citizenship, when I was a high school English teacher and we had turnitin.com and those things,
Yep.
because a student could conceivably could retrieve a paper, buy a paper, Google the first thing they see, and then cut and paste, "Here's my paper," and what and again, there was this kind of, almost similar vibe, fear that there is now with AI, and legit people, people have concerns and fears just like they did 20 years ago about
Yep.
Google
Yep.
and Wikipedia and those things. Well, we found ways and opportunities to transform that into a teachable moment, right? And to teach students and others to be critical consumers of information, right? And I
Yep.
see that same thing, that same mindset happening now, with AI. It's exciting, I feel, and again, have we? I don't even think we've scratched the
Oh, no.
surface on
And
it.
it's funny, two things that stand out. One is every time I present on anything with AI, I always say, this is the worst it's ever going to be. And it kind of
Yes.
stops them. And they're like, and you can see them thinking, I'm like, literally, if you're like, well, this is pretty good, it's only going to get better. I
Right.
mean, and so I think we have to understand that, and that scares people. Sometimes it makes them think. But then that voice idea, and this is where we would have teachers. So a friend of mine, Courtney Edelman, is a high school instructional coach. And we were getting a lot of, my kids are cheating. Can you help us figure out if this came from AI and so forth? And teachers really getting frustrated. And as we were preparing for IdeaCon, we're like, let's do a session on, and of course, I can't remember the exact title, but it's using AI, but keeping your voice. And so we're going to walk teachers through what we think might be a series of steps. For instance, if you're teaching writing, how do you help students understand here's what AI is lacking? And so we've gone from, hey, we ask 3 of our instructional coaches, can you write us a paragraph that you wrote? And then can you put the same prompt? We gave them a prompt. You put
Yeah.
the same prompt into Chat GPT or Magic School. And so there's 3 different responses. Don't tell us which one's AI. Courtney and I took it, and this is going to be in our presentation. We took it and said, okay, we think this one is the human produced one.
Hmm.
And then we took a chart, and we're doing all this as like, we're not even, this is our preparation for the session. Then it was like, okay, why did we say that? What does this one have that these two don't?
Right.
And then it's like, okay, now talk to students about that. Like, look at what is, this is not you. This is not your voice. And so we're going to try to walk teachers through some activities where they can get students to think about, okay, here's a paragraph that we're doing one on, you are a kid who has to come home and tell your parents that you had an accident in the car. It's a
Mm.
paragraph. But we're going to have asked them, okay, what are some of your favorite phrases? What are some of your favorite this? What are your,
Excuses.
yes. Now take that paragraph, that idea, and craft it into something that is you. And then it's just kind of like little steps where then you start realizing, okay, AI is good to give me ideas. I am struggling with an idea.
Hmm.
And we're hoping that that has some kind of resonance. It's, we have to keep the human voice going. And I
Right.
think that's what we have to focus on.
I love that. Man, that sounds like that's going to be a great session at IdeaCon. And I if I was there, I'd be front and center taking notes, my friend. Before we go, I've got three quick questions for you that I prompted you before we hit record, and this is the principal liner notes, and we do talk about music, and I know you're a fan as well, but we'll just kind of do a quick, kind of speedball thing. All right,
Okay.
Don, what is your favorite album of all time?
Uh, 10,000 Days by Tool.
Nice, nice. Just
I love the band. I like that. Here's, it sounds good. It's got a great beat, but then when you dig into the lyrics, you're like, wow, this is, it's mind blowing. I mean, they're just amazing.
That's awesome. Awesome. What album or piece of music inspires and motivates you personally?
It's, I would say Tom Sawyer by Rush,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and I honestly think it's the best song of all time. I
Wow.
love it. And anytime it comes on, I mean, I'm banging on the table.
Yeah.
I become Neil Peart and all of that. There is something about it, and it's always been that way. I mean, I love the album Moving Pictures.
Mm.
It's just, it's a great song. My daughter and I went and saw Iron Claw
Oh, I
and the
don't know that.
wrestling movie, and
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
yes.
The Von
Oh,
Erich
one of the
brothers. Yeah.
saddest movies you'll ever see.
Yeah.
But when they come out, they decide they're going to come out to Tom Sawyer. And my daughter just looks at me and she's like, rolling her eyes like, oh boy, dad's, we're in a theater, dad. Don't.
Yeah. Don't lose it. Yeah. No, I
Yes.
got you. Rush, man, that's such a great album. I always appreciate Geddy Lee's synthesizer riff on
Yep.
it. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't resist.
Oh,
So
it's great.
sorry to all Rush fans. And last but not least, what is a lesson or a thought from an album that inspires or shapes your profession?
So this was the hardest one, but as I've been thinking about it, I'm like, I like harder music. There's a song called Happy by Mudvayne. And it is, I mean, it's like that. It's happy. Are you
Mm,
happy? And
mm.
what does it mean to be happy? And now it is in your face, loud, but it's just that is, I was trying to debate between that and a Disturbed song, as like my walk up song. So yeah, that's what I would, that's my answer.
Oh, awesome. Well, Don, thanks for sharing, and I'll be sure to kind of put those nods in the show notes so folks can track those down. Don Sturm, I have really appreciated our time together on the podcast, and I'm grateful for our connection and kinship and baldness.
Yep,
And
yep.
I hope as this is airing, that all of the great vibes and connection that you inspire will continue to ruminate through IdeaCon, and hopefully I can get to it next year.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Thank you for having me. This was a great way to start a Saturday.
Absolutely. Friends, thank you so much for tuning into the Principal Liner Notes podcast. Please be sure to connect and follow with Don. Don is very active and interactive on his various social media platforms, and he's always asking questions too. So be
Man.
sure to connect with him, and I'll have all of his social media links in the show notes. Don't forget to share with the world your ideas, your visions, and your hopes because the world needs them and you help make the world a better place. This is Sean Gaylord with Don Sturm on the Principal Liner Notes podcast. Thanks for tuning in.